All right, well, I show 7 o'clock, so I guess we can get started. Can we all rise for the pledge? I pledge allegiance
Allegiance to the flag
of the
of the
United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible,
And
with
justice.
liberty and justice for all.
Justice for all.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Fryrick,
Here.
Mr. Posnell,
Here.
Mr. Robinson,
Here.
Mr. Sanders,
Here.
Mr. Scalette,
Here.
Mrs. Schrader,
Here.
Mr. Sears,
Here.
Mr. Sullivan,
Here.
and Mr. Toman.
Here.
9 members present.
Thank you. Reminder to please mute yourself during the meeting. And this is the first opportunity for public comment. Thank you.
I will have some additional public comments then.
Okay.
Go ahead and refresh, Wendy. Sorry.
Has everybody had time?
Yes, John, thank you.
Ellen, I can see your face. Are you good? Okay. Thank you. Okay, we have the minutes of the regular monthly meeting of January 21st, 2021 linked. Unless there are corrections, I would set them forth as approved as submitted. Hearing no changes, I think we can move on. The Board Negotiation Committee met in virtual meeting format on January 26th of 2020 and January 29th of 2021 and February 2nd of 2021 as permitted by Section 707 of the Sunshine Act. No official action was taken. The board met in executive session in virtual meeting format prior to this meeting as permitted by Section 707 of the Sunshine Act for the purpose of discussing matters of negotiation. No official action was taken. And I believe at this point, Mr. Scalette had asked to make a brief statement. Unmute.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Great, thank you. Thanks, John. I'd like to reflect for a moment on what an honor and privilege I find it to be a member of the school board, and to encourage anyone listening to this to give consideration to becoming a member of the board yourself, which would require that you begin paperwork in the next few weeks to start the process. I say this because of the value of a school board that offers a diverse representation for our population. So please think on this and feel welcome to reach out to me or any school board member if you want to learn more about those possibilities. Thank you, John.
I'd like to reinforce that. It's challenging, it's rewarding, and it's an important thing to do for our community. So I would encourage everyone as well at home to go through the effort of doing the paperwork and run. Okay. Thanks, Steve. Dr. Williams. Unmute.
Thank you, Mr. Posnow. Tonight on the agenda, the first item on the agenda is a recommendation for changing our learning mode. I want to preface this by saying that people who believe we should stay hybrid feel they have an overwhelming amount of evidence to support their position, and people who believe we should be fully open believe they have an overwhelming amount of evidence to support their positions. I don't believe that there's an overwhelming amount of evidence to support either position, so I have to go on the information I have at hand. And in August, we decided to use the hybrid model because we knew we couldn't maintain 6 feet of distance, and everyone in the county knew that too. A few districts decided they were going to do hybrid, and a large number decided they were going to do in-person instruction. We thought we were taking the best approach at the time, and I still think we took the best approach at the time because we had not much to go on other than what people thought we should do, as opposed to what the science says. Well, as we traveled through the first marking period and then the second marking period, and now we're partway through the third marking period, I watched carefully what's going on around us in other school districts. I talk with my colleagues in other districts sometimes daily, but at least twice a week to see what's going on in their districts and to see how they're faring. And what is overwhelmingly clear to me is that they're not maintaining 6 feet of distance, and they're still avoiding spread at the elementary level. There is some sign of it happening at the secondary level, but not at the elementary level. And this is without vaccines, and this is with masking, and doing 6 feet of distance as much as they possibly can, which is pretty rare. And they've been able to do it, and they've had very little disruptions, if any, in their elementary program. I have 2 grandkids that are kindergartners. Their school has been uninterrupted, and they're in person every day. So these are the things I have to go on. I'm not going on my gut. I'm not going on my feelings. I'm going on what I see and what I observe and what I read. As I mentioned, you can find evidence to support both sides of this issue. So what I'm recommending is that we go back to in-person instruction for 4 days a week, leaving Wednesdays as a virtual day at this point in time. That could change down the road, but we need that day for several reasons. One, we need to transition and make some shifting of schedules and whatnot. We may have to adjust periodically, and especially in the first couple of weeks. I also want to leave the Wednesdays as a virtual day so that we're working with a local pharmacy to try to acquire and schedule vaccines for our staff. We would start with the elementary level first, obviously, and work our way up to the secondary level. I won't name the pharmacy right now, but we have weekly conversations with them. They have not acquired the vaccines yet, but that is soon to arrive at their facility. And then we can schedule those vaccinations for Wednesdays. So the recommendation from the administration is the administration recommends beginning 4 days per week of in-person learning for grades K-5, beginning on March 1st, 2021, and the modification of the health and safety plan to include where feasible language for physical distancing. And at this point, I'm happy to entertain any questions or comments from the board.
Let's do the motion first and then open it up. Okay, so do I have a motion that we move to 4 days a week in learning K-5 and modify the health plan specifically for K-5 only? Am I correct there?
We would modify the health and safety plan for all students, but we're bringing the elementary back in person because we may at some point may bring the secondary back if that's deemed appropriate at some point in time. And we don't want to modify the health and safety plan again.
So did I state that the proposed motion correctly?
Yes.
Okay. Can I have a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Now, open it up. Let the questions begin.
Dr. Williams, question on, so we're starting with the elementary level. Let's assume that proceeds and it passes. What would be your decision points to open it up to other grade levels? Is there a rollout in your mind that you can share tonight?
The vaccinations would be key to consider anything as far as the secondary level, because if you've ever been in a high school hallway, and you certainly have, you know that not only can you not maintain 6 feet of distance, sometimes you can't maintain 6 inches of distance. So in that kind of confined space, I'm not comfortable with potential spread in there. And as I mentioned before, there is some evidence of some spread at the secondary level in other places. So I'm not willing to go full open at the secondary level just yet. But the vaccines certainly would help a lot.
John, this is Joel.
Yeah.
Yeah, Tim, my first question is, it seems that we draw the line where we have building divisions, and that certainly makes sense. I don't think it would make much sense to have 6th graders added to this group at this point. But I guess the question is, would it be feasible to at least consider going through the middle school at this point? It seems that spread is one of those things that it's not either or. It's not elementary kids separated somehow distinctly from kids that are not elementary. There's a spectrum. And I'm wondering if the risk that you've discussed with fellow superintendents in the middle school is troubling enough that we can't consider opening the middle school as well.
Yeah, it's a good question. And what we're seeing is that middle schoolers participate in extracurricular activities. And those kinds of activities tend to cause more quarantining. So it's for that reason, it's for the outside contact that they would have, because they're more apt to participate in outside activities outside of our school system too, not just our interscholastic sports. So I would think that the next level we would go to would be middle school. It wouldn't necessarily be middle school and high school together. It could be phased in. We just have to wait and see how it plays out.
Dr. Williams, why not go 5 days a week, or at least do 4 contiguous days? Either Monday through Thursday or Tuesday through Friday.
Yeah. The Wednesday, that's part of the pattern now. The virtual Wednesday would be no shift for families because they right now don't have in-person learning on that day. To make it a different day of the week might cause a disruption that would be difficult for families to manage. So for example, if we said we're not going to do virtual Wednesdays, we're going to do virtual Fridays or virtual Mondays, that might be difficult for families to adapt to. So I don't want to do that to them. And as I mentioned before, we're going to use those Wednesdays to make minor adjustments and tweaking, and to get vaccinations scheduled for staff when they are available to our staff, and those kinds of logistical things.
Talk to me about how your staffing is going to work. Do we have enough teachers? Do we have enough substitute teachers? We're doing some FMLAs I see coming up. Where do we stand, on the teacher front?
No change. We'll face the same challenges we face now.
Well, how are we doing as far as getting substitutes? Excuse me.
It's tough. It's tough. We have administrators covering classes now, and that's not going to change.
Except that now we'll have more students in them perhaps, or something. Most of our classrooms, I'm thinking, are going to be somewhat closer than 6 feet. Am I correct? I mean, it's just across the board. When you look at them, you got 800 or 850 square feet in a room. And
yeah, that's correct. We'd be in a similar boat to everybody else in the county.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So Dr. Williams, we currently have TOPS, and we have what would now be in class. We restrict people moving back and forth except at the start of sessions. As I get comments coming in, it seems like there's a big group of people that are concerned about this move. So
Yeah.
would we allow people to go to TOPS midstream?
Well, and I'm glad you brought that up, because initially we did restrict it to just marking period breaks. But over the last couple marking periods, the principals have been working with families who do want to make the move midstream, and they've been able to accomplish that. So we have that experience to fall back on when it comes time to move a child from, because March 1st is not the beginning of the 4th marking period. So we have the experience of dealing with transitioning kids from top to hybrid, or hybrid to top, midstream, mid-marking period.
Yeah, I guess the other observation is, in spite of everything that you're seeing in print and everything, the CDC hasn't yet changed its recommendation. Their recommendation is still hybrid and no indoor sports. So I think they're coming out in a couple of days with a change, or at least with a new policy.
Well, the CDC is actually saying schools should be open.
Yeah.
So that is a change. That is a change in, it may not be their official policy, but their spokespeople are saying that.
If I might, I think what CDC and Rachel Walensky in particular mean by safely reopening is what we've already done, which is to say opening hybrid, opening socially distanced, masked in de-densified classrooms with daily in-home symptom screenings, contact tracing, and yes, thus far we've had no in-school transmission. So we did safely open without vaccinations from the standpoint of a lot of the frankly contrived public discussion around Dr. Walensky's comments over the last week or so. I think the media in some cases looking for conflict where conflict doesn't actually exist in the guidance. But new guidance is expected from CDC on Wednesday. And as per the current guidance, which was updated on February 3rd, we move along CDC's continuum of risk from some risk or medium risk to higher risk when we change from hybrid with students, teachers, and staff following all steps to protect themselves and others, such as proper use of face masks, social distancing, and hand hygiene, to in-person with students, teachers, and staff following some steps to protect themselves and others, such as proper use of face masks, social distancing, and hand hygiene. That's CDC's current guidance in the risk continuum. So I think that unless we are somehow changing the definition that we're using, we are also increasing the number of close contacts our students will have in a day, which would mean that when quarantines occur, they're probably going to affect more students. Contact tracing will involve more students. And I have concerns that we don't have enough CSNs or nursing assistants to properly handle that.
Yeah, we will not be able to maintain the distancing we've been able to maintain. And I know that's what the CDC stuff says, but when I look around us, people have done it successfully. And I don't think my colleagues are lying to me.
No, I'm not second guessing the data, but we're getting down to, obviously there are schools that are doing more in-person learning in elementary and have also reported, I think with numbers comparable to ours, low or no in-school transmission in terms of the way the numbers are constructed. Dallastown, Dover area, Hanover, Northern York County, Red Lion, Southeastern, and Spring Grove. As far as I'm aware, all are offering in-person elementary classes either 4 or 5 days a week. But the physical layouts of buildings and classrooms can come into play. I mean, I know that we're not talking about intermediate level yet, but, and I'm not trying to be glib, but there are stairwells at Dallastown Intermediate that are the size of some of our classrooms. So it really does come down to the layout of buildings and whether classrooms can be reconfigured. I can't quite wrap my head around yet what in practice where feasible means in a classroom at Indian Rock. If it means that kids are shoulder to shoulder for more than say 15 minutes in a way that they aren't now, then I think that we are more than doubling whatever transmission risk exists for those students, in that we are doubling the element of transmission risk that comes from the sheer number of contacts in a day when we double class size. We're then adding to that risk burden when we change our protocols to relax the social distancing requirement. Now, the absolute level of risk for kids under the age of 10 seems to be the break point in terms of the seroprevalence studies. Nobody knows why that's true. It comes down to some sort of different enzyme expression in younger children. The ACE2 receptor is not as prevalent, and that seems to be age dependent. No one is really entirely certain why there seems to be this age differential, but it seems to cluster around age 10. And while the absolute level of risk for the kids K through 5, is low, I have some concerns that increasing that level of risk for the teachers and staff in the building before they've been vaccinated both increases that level of risk and is not at an absolutely low level. I mean, the highest levels of the greatest increase in excess mortality due to COVID-19 has been in the 25 to 44 age bracket. So I'm concerned about elevated risks to the educators, and I know the administration is doing everything it possibly can in the shambles of a vaccination rollout that we've seen in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. That is about as diplomatically as I can put it in present company. But I don't have any confidence that vaccines will be able to be available to our elementary educators so that they can have had both the first and second shot with the post-second shot window in time for, frankly, even the end of March. So I'm not opposed to voting for this in principle. I'd have been frankly prepared to vote for K through 5 being open based upon some of the late summer numbers that we had before everything kind of went to smithereens in the county. But because again, the risk for students 10 and under seems to be different. Transmission risk, the severity of the disease, all of that seems to be different for students under the age of 10. But I've got some real concerns about what this means. I'm having a hard time wrapping my head around what a classroom with the normal number of students looks like for our educators in terms of the and some of the affiliated arts and other staff who move from classroom to classroom and across buildings, and whether it presents an acceptable risk for them. And I'll lay off.
So I'd just like to say we can speculate a lot as to what the risks of COVID are to our staff and to our students. But we know exactly what the risks of our kids not being in school are, because we've seen it for the last, year, basically. We know it is detrimental to them, not just academically, but socially, emotionally, their mental health. We need to get back to school. And, while I am obviously fully supportive of K-5, I'm fully supportive of K-12. And I would say that I think our numbers, I was just looking at our chart, our per grade numbers in the middle school are lower than they are in our elementary schools. We have, and I counted all of the numbers, the confirmed cases, the probables, and the non-counted. There were 27 of those in the middle school for 3 grades. So that's 9 per grade. There were a total of 61 at the 4 elementary school level buildings. So slightly more than 10. I think there's a good case for putting the middle school in this mix as well. But I absolutely believe we have to do it K-5. And fully supportive, as I said, we can speculate a lot. I agree 100% with you, Tim, that we can all say there's facts on one side or the other, but there are certain things that we can see, and the detriment to our educational delivery we can see, and it's proven to me. Thanks.
Dr. Williams, what happens if we do this, we open up the schools and we hit a real stumbling block? Are we prepared to turn back on a dime?
Yeah, because our
Hybrid, and just playing devil's advocate here,
yeah.
God forbid there's a surge or something.
Right. We can easily transition back to hybrid at pretty much at the drop of a hat if we have to, because the schedules don't change really. The only difference would be if we have somebody who wants to move from in-person instruction to top or top to in-person instruction. Those things we'd have to deal with on a onesie-twosie basis. But by and large, there's no change in the overall structure of how we're running things if we have to move back to hybrid.
Now, I took the opportunity over the weekend to speak to some of my neighbors just who have younger children, and they wholeheartedly want their kids back in school. There was just, no questions asked. They're elementary students. And as a grandmother, I'm watching my 2 granddaughters in a district down near Philadelphia have had absolutely no problem at all. They're 5 days a week. Yeah, they've had a couple cases, but not a lot, and they're kindergarten and 3rd grade. So I guess there is some justification for starting there. Whether we add the middle school or not, I guess remains to be seen how easily we do this, and then all the changes that need to take place as far as busing and everything else, kind of stuff. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Chime in here for a second. First off, I want to, it's no secret, I'm supportive of a 5-day rollout for K through 12, but that's fine. I understand you're weighing the needs of safety in totality, and I applaud you for your efforts thus far. Our numbers have been nothing short of stellar in terms of the infection rates and the closures. I will say that at this point in time, I'm very supportive of moving to 4 days, because I think the not just the educational impact on the kids, but the social and mental impact on them, not having that back and forth with peers of their own age at such a critical time to develop that, and forcing them into, look, I've got 3 kids, and the more, for those parents out there, I'm sure you can all relate, get off your phone, get off the electronics, stop playing video games, and all we're doing is saying, nope, stay on there, stay in front of the screen, and that's the best that we can offer them. We're only at the tip of the iceberg right now in terms of what that impact is going to be on the socialization and mental well-being of kids 3, 5, 10 years down the line. We were already facing an issue with that when watching how our kids, when you go and go out to a restaurant, you see a family of 4 all looking at their phone and not communicating with one another. All we're doing is exacerbating that problem. So the more that we can get more face-to-face interaction right now, in my mind, is the right move. And I appreciate you pushing the envelope in that direction, because this is the first that I've seen us moving that way. We know how to go the other way. We've successfully done it the other way. I want to see us start moving forward with the 4-day, and I am supportive of actually what Mr. Toman said, but I understand that we have to take our steps as we take our steps. So that's all I've got. Thanks.
So if the CDC comes out in 2 days with something counter to where we're going, what's their response?
I think my response would be the same as it is today. When I look around, I'm not seeing evidence of spread at the elementary level. And then it wouldn't matter to me what the CDC says. I look around us and see what I see. I thought they were crazy when they opened up full open initially in August. Based on what the CDC was publishing and what the Department of Health was publishing, I thought they were nuts. Well, it turns out maybe I'm the one who was nuts. But I wasn't willing to take that risk now. Now I have a body of evidence that shows me that it can be done safely. So I mean, we either make decisions on information or we don't. And the facts that are around us. And I prefer to make decisions on the facts that are around us. So the CDC came out with a different recommendation tomorrow or Wednesday. I would still stay this course, this recommendation.
Well, I'd like to offer a thought. First, I certainly respect all of the views of the board members and all the public comments as well from all of the community. And Dr. Williams, your leadership on this. I'd like to just convey where I'm thinking. I'll support further reopening once the teachers and staff had the opportunity to be vaccinated, particularly how the social distancing will be relaxed at York Suburban. And that's not yet available as of tonight. So it seems to me like we're close, and I look forward to supporting the reopening. But for me, under the current circumstances, I support access to the vaccination first. And so until then, I support the hybrid approach.
This is Joel.
Yeah.
I have a question, Tim, and then a comment. The question has to do with quarantining. As we go into this 4-day-a-week situation, if children are quarantined, and it turns out that the speculation is correct, that it's more frequent and that the clusters are larger, what's the plan to handle that?
Well, the quarantining process doesn't change. We still have to follow those same kinds of quarantining things, and we've been following them, and we will continue to follow them. So that doesn't change.
How's the education delivered during that period to the kids?
Well, that would vary from classroom to classroom. Some teachers are already streaming from their classroom, others are not, and do the education in a different way. There's no uniform way that students will get their education via quarantine.
And do you expect that process to stay the same?
If I was a teacher in the classroom and had students quarantining, I would probably stream from my classroom because to me, that would be the easiest way to keep them on par and on pace with what's going on in my classroom.
Is that something every classroom is equipped to do?
No. We'd have to make provisions. Not every classroom is equipped to do that, but we would get the equipment for those who want to do that.
I'd like to make an observation about the CDC and its guidelines, which tend to be, let's say, national in scope and maybe taking direction from international bodies like the WHO and others. My sense, and this is just me speaking, is that they're speaking to cities like Los Angeles and Chicago and some of the others that have not opened at all. And they're doing their best to try to encourage them to get to where we are and where we started. They're not necessarily talking to school districts like ours And we have the opportunity, and I think Tim's done an excellent job of this, of looking and being careful to look at real data, to look at the anecdotal, empirical evidence to support this recommendation tonight. Frankly, I think he's being too cautious, but that's just me. I'm for 5-day. I'm for at least taking it through the middle school, and I frankly don't see any reason why we shouldn't open it to high school. The other observation I would make is this. Our staff has done a wonderful job, and so have the kids. Give the kids credit. They have done a wonderful job of following the instructions that they've been given. They've adapted well. And my sense is they're not going to just drop everything and run. They're not going to rip their masks off and start hugging and kissing because they can go back to school 4 days a week. I think they're going to have the same level of respect for the rules and the guidance. And that for that reason alone, I think that we should probably consider full day, at least a 4-day for everybody. But I'll certainly support tonight's recommendation.
Who have we not heard from? Losan?
Yeah, I fear that it's too much too soon. I just think there's doubling the numbers. It worries me. Everything I've seen from the CDC says if you follow these mitigation measures well, and their big hitter is social distancing. And what we would be saying is basically we're throwing social distancing to the wind. I mean, as I see it, if you're looking at a typical elementary building, you can't socially distance on the school bus. You can socially distance in the hallway, but you can't socially distance in the classroom. It's just not possible. You can't, I'd be curious to know, I'm sure you guys have a plan for the lunchroom, for example, but that's going to be a big challenge. I think that's just a big concern for me. I certainly agree we need to get the kids back in school 5 days a week, K-12. I mean, I get that and support that. I spent my life as an educator. That's the best way for students to learn. But I'm concerned about our staff, our teachers. I mean, if we could just hold off, we're so close to getting through this. And I feel like we've done a good job so far. I mean, I'm sympathetic to the plight of parents. I've said that repeatedly as far as childcare goes. I'm certainly sympathetic to the mental health issues that we're seeing. It's going to be a long time before those are totally mitigated. I get that, and I sympathize with that. But I just don't think I can support this until we can get our staff vaccinated. And I applaud the administration for what they're doing so far. I don't know, I guess March the 1st was a random day. Let's revisit, in my mind, to, look at pushing this down the road. As awkward as it sounds, it seems to me it's too quick. We're so close to getting through this. So I think for me right now, I'd like us to stay the course.
Rich? Unmute.
Okay, I unmuted. So you want to know what I think, huh?
I'm brave.
Everybody just blanked out. What happened?
Nope, you're still here.
I am. Okay. Well, as long as you can hear me, that's all that counts. Yeah, I'm just going back to the discussion we had. That it seems so trite now when we were talking about school safety, and that meant hiring or not hiring police officers for the district. The one problem I have is regarding our faculty and administration. And the problem is, if I vote in favor of it, I would be asking them to do something I'm not doing myself, which would be walking into a classroom where there is risk. And I do have a problem with that. I would feel a lot better if I knew that our faculty and staff and everybody in the suburban community was vaccinated and had some measure of protection. So in that sense, I'm reluctant to support it. I see the rationale for it. I understand that fully, especially as far as the mental health goes. I think there's a fair degree of damage that's already been done. And the sooner we can start to alleviate that, the better. I would just feel a whole lot better if we knew that we'd done everything possible. And some of those steps are beyond our control.
Dr. Williams, has the association taken a position?
They've expressed concerns about physical distancing. They brought up also a couple new strains of the virus. They brought up the vaccines. A lot of the issues that we talked about tonight, they've already raised. And my response is to those issues is the same responses I gave you tonight.
Okay.
Dr. Williams, Steve Sullivan again. Quick question. Is it your position that another board vote would be required to change the model to include the middle school and high school?
Yes,
So if we approve health and safety plan language that is not grade dependent tonight, I don't know how to put this more diplomatically. We're not creating a fait accompli where the administration can reopen the high school and the middle school without coming back to us. Please don't take that personally. That's not how I mean it. I just can't think of
anything
putting
personally.
it in that.
So your question is, does the board vote tonight give the superintendent the ability to just unilaterally bring back secondary?
That's what I'm asking.
Yeah. That's a really good question. I honestly don't know the answer to that, but my intention would not be to do that without a board vote.
The motion is just for K to 5.
That's right. The motion right now is K to 5.
Right. But I think what Dr. Sullivan is asking is if once we modify the health and safety plan, that would allow for secondary to be brought back. And he's asking whether or not that a superintendent could do that without board vote.
And I would argue no because of the motion.
Yeah. I would argue no too, because I wouldn't do that without a board vote. It's just not something that I feel would be appropriate for a superintendent to do.
Okay, thank you.
If there are no other comments, Mr. Chuli, could we have a roll call vote, please?
May I ask one question before we do that?
Sure.
Dr. Williams, do we have any reasonable idea of, or any last minute idea or miraculous development on the horizon for getting vaccines for the faculty?
Well, if you'd asked me that
a loaded question.
Yeah, if you'd asked me that question last week or 2 weeks ago, I would have said, "Oh my gosh, there's nothing on the horizon for 1B." This past week, I had some really encouraging conversations with the local pharmacy who feels pretty comfortable that they will be receiving vaccines, and we are working with them to have our staff vaccinated, some kind of mass vaccination kind of a protocol, either on site, on our site, or at their location. We haven't figured that all out yet. They do, the vaccines that they're getting come in blocks of 10. So we'd want to make sure we have 10 teachers signed up in a group so that no vaccines go to waste. And then we would run through our teachers as quickly as possible. We're not obviously going to make our teachers get vaccines, but what I'm hearing is that many of them are eager to get them. So we're going to do what we can to make that as seamless as possible for them to acquire vaccines. So 2 weeks ago, I was less optimistic. Last week, I became more optimistic based on a conversation I had with the president of a local pharmacy.
I don't mean to sound idiotic, but it's not a question where a tanker truck is going to pull up and be able to vaccinate everybody that wants one. I'm going on that premise, no?
Yeah, that's a safe bet. Yeah.
So it's going to be dribs and drabs?
No, they know we need 250 to 350 vaccines.
Okay.
and they didn't seem to bat an eye at that. So I'm feeling comfortable they'll be able to meet our needs. We have a handful of staff members who have already acquired vaccines through other means and other options. So the number of teachers who would need a vaccine is less than it was, say, 2 weeks ago,
Okay.
because some have gotten it through other means.
Can I ask just two quick questions? The March 1st date, can you provide some background as to why
Sure.
that date is? And then the other one, and I'm not sure, well, has there been any polling of teachers done as to those that would versus would not get the vaccine? And I ask that question because articles that I read about healthcare professionals show that anywhere from half to 2/3 are currently not getting the vaccine by choice. So has that been done by the association or by the district?
I'm not aware of any polling that's been done to find out whether or not they would be willing to get vaccinated. My position on that is the vaccine's available to you. It's your choice of whether or not to receive it. Like I mentioned, I'm not even going to twist anybody's arm. It's certainly not going to be required. I'm not going to beg them to go get it. They're adults. They make a decision as to whether or not they want to get a vaccine. I myself, I'm getting the vaccine. There's just no question in my mind. But some people have questions, and they need to go whichever way they feel is necessary for themselves. So that being said, if they do choose not to get a vaccine and they somehow come in contact with the virus and get the virus, that's what happens. And as far as the March 1st date, chose that date for a couple of reasons. One, that's a handful of weeks from tonight, about 3 weeks from tonight, I guess. And March 1st is a Monday. Seemed like a Monday would be a good day to start the process of transitioning to 4 days of instruction. Give teachers a chance to prepare to modify the rooms. Some teachers are going to be removing more furniture to promote distancing in their classrooms and make other provisions like that. So that's why we chose March 1st.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
If I may ask a question, I hope
Only if your microphone works.
Yeah, we're having a hard time hearing you, Carmen. You there?
I think we just lost Carly. She just.
Oh. Wait till you get her back.
She may want to take off her video and then her sound may come through.
Am I able to put it in a chat?
No, you're
good right now. Just leave your video off. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, sounds good. So my question is about transitioning to the TOP program for students who are currently in hybrid, whose parents feel that it's not safe for their kids to be going to school for the 4 days a week. So how long approximately does that process take? And will the kids, if we decide on going back full time tonight, will they have time and are able to transition to TOP before the March 1st date?
Yes, good question. And that worked well, Carly, when you have your video off. We can hear your voice pretty well. So when you give your report later on, you may want to turn your video off. That helped. That was much easier to hear you. Students, parents will be getting if this passes tonight, parents will be issued a survey tomorrow to find out their intention of what they want their child to be, whether it be TOP or in-person instruction. So they'll have an opportunity for each one of their children, if they have more than one child, in K-5, to make a determination as to what educational programming they'll receive. So that's one of the reasons for the 3-week lag time between decision and implementation. Is that good? Does that answer your question, Carly? Thumbs up? Okay. Thanks.
And Dr. Williams, if you get, say, 50 families wanting to move kids to TOP prior to the term change, can we handle that kind of throughput?
Yeah, well, that's another good question too, because let's say we get 50 kids in a grade level, for example. which would mean that we'd probably have to transition a teacher to top at that point. If the top number stayed where they are and we got 50 more top students, we'd probably have to transition a teacher out of face-to-face instruction into top instruction. It really depends on how the numbers all play out. We don't have any way of knowing at this point how we're going to have to do that or what we'll have to do in that regard. And that's another reason for the 3-week lead time, so that we can make appropriate provisions for staffing the 2 learning modes.
So we are talking about allowing sort of off-cycle moves to top, and you think that you can handle it even if there's a fairly substantial number of folks who think that the risk for their kids is not acceptable.
Yeah, we're going to have to handle it.
Okay.
Yep.
And that might actually help with the distancing problem.
Theoretically.
Yeah.
All right, well, if there are no more questions, Mr. Julie?
Mrs. Fryerick,
Yes.
Mr. Sullivan,
Yes.
Mr. Robinson,
Unmute, please.
No.
Mr. Scalette,
No.
Mrs. Schrader,
No,
Mr. Sanders,
Yes.
Mr. Sears,
Yes.
Mr. Posnell,
Yes.
Mr. Tillman.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Tonight, you may recall that we have this little thing, and it's not so little, is it, Dr. Krauser? This little thing called a comprehensive plan. And tonight is the second of 3 updates on the comprehensive plan that Dr. Krauser will be issuing tonight.
Thank you, Dr. Williams. I'm just going to share my screen here real quick. So, as I have shared before, part of this process is to keep the board and the community abreast of our plan being forward. And as Dr. Williams said, it's not a little process. And certainly we had a great juggling act going on with our 4 goals. And then we have thrown in, the pandemic at a global scale, which in many cases has aligned with a few of our priorities that we've kind of outstretched through our planning process and through some hurdles along the way. But as great educators that we are, we receive it, we learn from it, we shape it, and we grow it, and we continue to evaluate it. This process, as before, as I shared, is to keep you abreast in a small scale of where we are so that larger progress monitoring continue to unfold as we move forward in the planning process. So this is number 2 of this year's 3 updates. As a reminder, the planning process keeps a maintaining focus on that outcome or that future we hope to achieve, our vision, with our boots on the ground in our mission, inspiring a bold future with the things that we process in this plan and moving forward. 4 major pillars or goal areas or buckets boiled down to student success, district well-being, of course, the quality of our teachers and their learning and growing as the plan moves forward and beyond, and then what our roles are as a system to be responsible and outreach with our community. So as I shared each time, I'm going to introduce the strategies that we've got underway, as well as the actions that we have been adding. So since our last meeting in November, we've added an additional action to our goal area number 1 and our 6th strategy, which is this opportunities for increased student agency. And student agency is all about students kind of owning their learning and making those decisions. Part of this, we had a very good plan, and it's aligning to what a lot we're seeing with the pandemic. It's accelerated some of the process to be fold. So we've initiated that process in a couple different ways. As before, I like to show some images of kind of that process moving forward. So we're continuing to use data in that background to drive our decisions for where we're going with our students. You can see some images on the left side of the screen. Well, with our modes of learning, you have the wonderful Mrs. Foy on the left side there, navigating both modes of learning, working in some virtual experiments with students. So we have students in class and out of class. The next image is, again, when we're looking for ways to differentiate the way that we're learning and experiencing it. You've got students that are engaging in class debates, while students are online engaged in that same debate. So we're diversifying those opportunities. In particular, some of the increasement of student agency that we did this particular rollout, you'll see two examples. Our bold newsletters continue to engage the community and the students in learning beyond. And there's a sample example that was done at East York where Dr. Furman and her team have taken a little bit of what we learned with district well-being and what we're learning about the brain and the health, as well as linking that clearly into where students are going with some future goal setting. So there's some students there working on an O, the places you will go. And it's a program that she's been working with where students work with colleges and universities and set some goals as they move forward. So our second goal area, of course, was district well-being. And really for this one, we've continued to progress and move forward in our major actions. And those major actions were really built around our trauma-informed or our healing-centered approaches. The buildings themselves have been working as teams to unpack this differentiated learning that we shared in the very first time. Teachers are going through a video series, and then as faculties, they're working through that. We've also begun the process from a health and safety perspective with a larger threat assessment team process. We started that process early, and we're now moving through the final stages in preparation for that to get underway to start the 21-22 school year. Again, one of our actions was to keep mental health in the forefront of our conversations. And there's a quick snapshot of course, Ms. King, who joined you 2 board meetings ago to keep that mental health conversation and all things mental health in the forefront. High quality teaching and learning. Again, an opportunity to shout out for the teachers. I know it was kind of these conversations that we just had regarding modes of learning, but the teachers are really stretching themselves and growing themselves in this process. A lot of it was outlined in the plan. Some of it's organic, and as with any good plan, we're taking the things as they come in. In particular, we really worked on individual professional support for the teachers. That's been done at both a faculty level as well as at a global level, and it's the process of curriculum mapping. As you've kind of heard this theme, we're building a foundation in understanding curriculum mapping, starting with a foundation and understanding by design, which will be our universal language for planning and development. So here's a differentiated approach to that. Look, each building kicked off their curriculum mapping in a little different way, specific to the needs of the teachers in the building and the needs of their professional development. So we've had some groups that were working in small groups, breakout sessions, of course, differentiated because of COVID. We had some doing it remotely, some in mixed hybrid meetings, some asynchronous, some synchronous, but each one building that foundational knowledge and curriculum mapping as we move forward. And then lastly, comes back to our system goals as we continue to move ourselves forward. And most of this has been progressing. And again, I'm going to give a shout out to Ms. Chichuli. She has embraced a lot of things this fall and moving through this winter, and continues to set major priorities for us with our budget goals and initiatives, and clearly aligning that to the budget process. What continues to allow administration, our conversations and our dialogue to maintain a focus on what the goals that set forth for the budgetary initiatives were and how that aligns to where we're developing budget, having conversations about staffing and proposals as we move forward. The other part of that operational responsibility that we've dedicated to this first part of the year, the plan, is communication. I shared last time how we've updated some communication changes from our most recent audit. And there's a sample of our communications page. It has a pretty much overhaul where we've aligned our social media communications as well as learning to archive and catalog those resources. So again, a large kind of overview of where we are on the progress and how we're moving forward. Big initiatives moving into this spring will continue to move that student care team forward, as well as our high quality teaching and learning team. So as a reminder, you have that nice little kind of business card to help remind us of what our vision and mission is and how our goals and strategies continue to move us towards that division as we move forward. Questions, comments?
Yeah, can you go back 2 slides, do the budgeting stuff?
Yes.
Maybe not to time, but that always gets my attention.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes.
So just so we understand where we are, in this year, we're $1.7 million short in terms of a balanced budget in this current year.
I'm going to defer that exact number to Mr. Chichuli.
That's correct.
If I switch over to the coming year, we're going to go into that year another 3.5 million in the hole.
That's correct.
That's kind of problematic. We're facing we came out of a difficult year and we're going into a worse year. Just thought I'd highlight that. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions for Dr. Krauser? All right, thank you, Dr. Krauser. Tonight, joining us for administrative reports, we have Dr. Snedden and Dr. Gully. Dr. Snedden, would you like to go first?
I would, thank you.
Sure.
Me go ahead and share my screen here for everybody. Fortunately, we have a crowd of middle school teachers. They were eager to tune in via YouTube. So I wanted to highlight all of the great things that our teachers are doing here at the middle school. So to start off, give you a little bit of update about what we've been doing at the middle school. Here on the left, seeing the math counts competition. 15 hybrid and top students, they represented YSMS in the local math counts competition. This was the sprint round that involved 30 word problems that the students were solving without a calculator within 40 minutes. So prior to this, they were engaged in some weekly practice problems as they worked to prepare. Our 7th grade students, they received a presentation from the Burn Center talking about mental health, including the causes of mental health issues, addressing those needs, as well as removing any of the stigmas attached to mental health. Ms. Bedell and I are still continuing our Students of the Week. Each week, we are proud to be able to represent or to recognize about 8 students each week as Students of the Week. These students are nominated by their teachers for being either an outstanding student or showing some of the qualities that we want to see in our students. One of our focuses at YSMS has continued to be hands-on learning experiences. And definitely this year, our teachers are working extra hard to try to still incorporate those hands-on learning experiences as part of their instruction. So I wanted to highlight and emphasize the hard work of the teachers. Here you see 2 different science classes, a 6th grade as well as an 8th grade. And you can see some of the COVID protections that they are putting in place, such as using gloves as to eliminate the high touch surfaces. You see shower curtains being hung to separate students. So our teachers are really going above and beyond to still provide those experiences to their students. Here you also see an art class that students are still engaging in those same unified arts activities that make middle school exciting for students. Another hands-on learning experience that we have is obviously our TV studio. One thing that's unique this year with fewer extracurricular activities going on, we don't have as many announcements as what we typically would. So we've really had to try to change things up. You see the 2 boys there that are reading off some sports score information so that we can still provide this hands-on learning experience for our kids. One thing I want to highlight about the TV studio, this year we started streaming so that our top students are also able to watch our morning announcements. And one of the pieces that we've learned is some of our equipment has been outdated. So I've been working with Mr. Jackson and Mr. Payne to go through and provide a 3-year rolling plan to try to update some of that equipment so that we can continue streaming for our students and potentially family whenever they are not in the actual school building. And last but not least, I want to highlight an upcoming event that we have. We have our Annie Jr. production that's going to be on Friday, February 26th, as well as Saturday 27th. This is a virtual performance. So I know myself, I'm looking forward to turning on the fireplace and enjoying watching Annie and watching the kids shine and seeing their hard work on the screen while I'm at home. So hopefully we can get our families as well as the board here to take part in that. The information is available on our website on how to buy a ticket for that. So thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Snedden. Any questions for Dr. Snedden? Okay. Dr. Gully.
Thank you, Dr. Williams. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you tonight, as I wish to review some happenings at Indian Rock. The slide in front of you will be summarizing some recent professional learning activities, how YS supports prospective principal interns, and finishing up with a brief review of some building information. Just to begin, each Wednesday afternoon is a collaboration time in each of our elementary buildings for all of our faculty and staff. The time that we have set aside for teacher preparation is really a lot of review of student data and also instructional planning for student success. As you've heard from Dr. Krauser, he has unveiled different bold initiatives during this year, and one of them being the review of curriculum. Over the course of the next 3 to 5 years, curriculum mapping of unit lesson plans will take place at all of our levels and all of our buildings. Just recently, each building engaged in a kickoff of the curriculum mapping process, Understanding by Design. And twice a month, each building will be receiving professional learning led by a building team. It really is an exciting process that will not only maximize and provide high quality unit lesson planning, but will also foster faculty collaboration that maximizes best practices to support our students and teachers. As you will note from the slides, Indian Rock teachers, as Mrs. Irwine's going through, met in cooperative groups to begin that curriculum mapping process. One segment included what words come to mind when you think of a portrait of a YS graduate. And so yes, thank you, Mrs. Irwine. And so we came up with the word art link. And you'll notice it's a graduation cap, but all the different thoughts, words, descriptions of what we believe a portrait of a graduate is. If you click on it, you'll see all the different descriptors. So these are some of the skill sets that Indian Rock teachers envision for each graduate. And as shared, the other pictures in the slide show teachers working collectively to review the essential components of a unit map and then reporting out and summarizing the learning with their colleagues. So again, we'll continue with this process in the coming weeks and months through the remainder of the school year. If we go back to the first slide, most of you know that we have teachers in a variety of different positions pursuing their master's degrees as far as their programming. But we do have some teachers who have an emphasis on administrative leadership. Each building has aspiring teacher leaders. And with us this evening, I have Mrs. Kayla Pavlovsky, who's the autistic support teacher here at Indian Rock, one of the two that we have. And she's currently completing her administrative internship. During the internship, Mrs. Pavlovsky and I have met and will continue to meet for the remainder of the school year to plan, to discuss, and engage some of the roles and responsibilities of a principal. Some of our current topics have included budgeting and finance, communication and collaboration, curriculum, discipline, action planning, observation and supervision, parent involvement, professional development, leadership, and so on. So this evening, I did invite Mrs. Pavlovsky. She's here with us. So at this time, Mrs. Pavlovsky, do you have a few words to share?
Yes, thank you, Dr. Gully. Good evening. Just as Dr. Gully said, my name is Kayla Pavlovsky, and I am one of the autistic support teachers at Indian Rock. I'm currently enrolled in the Masters of Educational Leadership program at York College, and I am working to complete my internship over the course of the spring as well as the summer semesters. I'm also currently finishing up my last graduate class of the program with Dr. Krauser. So over the last few weeks that I've started my internship, I've had several experiences so far. And I've also had the opportunity to observe 2 teachers at the middle school with Dr. Snedden as part of one of the tasks that I was given to do. I'm also going to be attending a PTO meeting, doing walkthroughs in the buildings, attending parent conferences, and looking at some discipline cases throughout the upcoming weeks. So I'm very grateful for this opportunity and looking forward to all that I'm able to encounter. Thank you again for letting me attend tonight.
Thank you, Mrs. Pavlovsky. Not only is she a great teacher, but obviously she's having an excellent administrative internship so far. The one thing I do want to touch upon too, York College and McDaniel College, a bulk of our teachers have gone through the program, 2 very high quality programs that we've had come through at all levels in our buildings. And then lastly, I just want to end up with a brief review of some of the building happenings. As you will see on 3A of what we have there is that we had our mid-year benchmarking data with Acadians for reading and math. That data is going to help our teacher teams assist with planning and a delivery of instruction to support our students, not only their learning, but also their development. Just last week, we had some spirit days in the building. Students and staff participated in a sports team day this past Thursday and Friday, prepping for the Super Bowl and displaying their favorite team apparel and colors. Later this week, the teachers will be holding friendship/Valentine's Day celebrations by cohort. Also last week, we had Book It program students recognized who met their reading goals for the month of December. They got to engage in some bingo games. And then in January, kids had milk and cookies with a read aloud. And we had other drinks as well for those who couldn't have milk. And then lastly, we just hope the board enjoyed the various cards, slides, posters, and the electronic presentations from our students and staff in recognition of School Board Appreciation Month. And just to know that our students, our faculty and staff, we do appreciate your support of not only Indian Rock, but also our York suburban community. So this concludes my report. Are there any comments or questions?
All right, thank you, Dr. Gully.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And that concludes the superintendent's report for this evening.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Tichuli.
Okay, good evening. Items A through K in the business office report are for discussion only and will be for a formal vote on February 22nd. So the first item is the acceptance of the June 30th, 2020 local audit that was presented at the Property and Finance Committee on February 1st. Are there any questions on item number 1? Okay. Item number 2 is the
Kathy, I'm sorry, I was muted. I just would like to thank you very much. We've come through another really clean audit, and I think that's 100% on your shoulders, and I want to thank you for that.
Thank you. The second item is the approval of the proposed Lincoln Intermediate Unit budget for 21-22. As you can see, and we've attached the budget as well, that there is going to be a decrease of $10,127.13 from the current year's contribution of $15,722, which leaves our contribution for next year at $5,595.64. So what's happening here is that the IU budget has gone from 2 components. One is a contribution from each of the districts and fee for service. And now they're moving strictly to a fee for service component. And so that's what you see. This is the portion where it is just a contribution. And so next year is the last year of that contribution. Any questions on the IU budget? Okay, item number C is the approval of the proposed York Adams Academy budget for 21-22. And as you can see that there is an increase in their expenditure budget of $24,819. And this will include a 3% increase in salaries. The membership seat will increase by $150 per seat for 21-22. Moving the expenditure for the district from $64,500 to $66,750. And this is for seats from between 12 and 15. Okay. Items D, E, and F are change orders. And I've asked Mr. Wentz We also have Matt Page at Moore Engineering and Mr. Gerling here to give you just a brief summary of these change orders. And I'll just turn it over to Mr. Wentz for this section.
Thank you, Kathy. The first change order we have on the docket here is one received from Silvertip. They're the mechanical contractor for the capital improvement projects. It includes extending the heat trace for 5 units up through the curb adapters into the units. As you remember, these are the units that were replaced over a 4-day holiday weekend. The work started on a Thursday evening, continued through Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and then wrapped up for the most part on a Monday. We were aware leading up to that there would be a little bit of modification needed. The intent was to remove the heat trace existing and install existing, and they knew ahead of time it needed some modification. The modifications were a little more impactful than what we understood. The result was the $3,393.04 change order. Any questions on that one?
That's at the middle school, correct, Seth?
That are 3 units. It covers 3 units at the middle school, 2 units at Valley View. They all required additional extensions to the heat trace.
Okay.
Okay. Next change order we received was also from Silvertip. They're the mechanical contractor on those capital improvement projects. This is to switch out. There's a credit here, and then there's also a charge here. The credit is for the connections that were not used for one of the pumps, and the charge is to switch out the starter piece of starter equipment for that. It was originally bid as a motor starter, and after further coordination with Johnson Controls, it needed to be upgraded to a variable frequency drive. That charge between the credits and the charge comes out to a net charge of $1,050.09. That was caught before any equipment was ordered. This was before the shop drawing process actually happened. So there's no loss of funds to the school district as a result of this. This is all just the actual cost of the equipment. Okay, hearing no questions on that one. There is a change order, a 2-part change order from Lauer Construction, the electrical contractor on the same projects. The first one is to remove 3 variable frequency drives from the middle school and 2 from Valley View. All of these variable frequency drives were located above ceilings and below roof depth. The typical installation of these variable frequency drives would be adjacent to the unit on the roof. Because they were located in an odd location and it was not known at the time of demolition, they still remain in place and they should be removed. The cost of removal, which is basically splicing those VFDs out of the circuit loop and putting in new conduit, a junction box to tie it all back together, is a cost of $8,874. The reason it's operating right now is because the VFDs are operating on what's called bypass mode, which means the electric just flows through them. To leave them in place, it'll continue to operate, but we run the risk of losing the units if any of those VFDs fail. Those VFDs are beyond their useful life and could fail, and as we know, they never fail at a convenient time. So the solution here would be to remove them, connecting the electric without a need of a bypass mode in an old piece of equipment with the risk of taking your unit offline when you don't expect it. Cost of that is $8,874.50. Any questions on that one? Okay. And the last item, it is also from Lauer Construction, the electrical contractor on these projects. They are requesting a $3,350 change order due to the extension of the schedule. Due to The pumps on these projects taking so long, from the time that we received the submittals to the time that we approved them, we moved as quickly as we could from a design team standpoint and a contractor team standpoint. We even switched out the type of pumps to remove the need for extended schedule. Due to the pandemic, everything happening in supply chains, the lead time on these pumps was greater than what was originally anticipated. The result of that was about a 1.5 to 2 month extension for the majority of the pump installations. It was meant to wrap up in October according to the front end specifications, and the majority of the pumps were installed wrapping up around November, and then the final set in December. Now there is one pump still out there that needs to be installed. It is still on order right now and has not arrived on site due to lead times. Lauer is not proposing any additional charge to install that last one. They said this is the only schedule extension they'll be submitting for. Now, because the specifications did describe the project being wrapped up in October, they do have a legitimate standpoint here. And so we are recommending the approval of a $3,350 extension.
Any questions on the change orders? Okay, moving on to items K through, I'm sorry, I've been using letters and there are numbers on the actual, my apologies. We're moving on to the bid awards for the door projects at East York Elementary and at Indian Rock and also at middle school. And if you recall, last year around this time, this was part of a bigger project. It included the media center at the high school and the music wing at the middle school as well. Because of lead time concerns on the doors arriving on time, we felt that it was best to postpone this portion of the bids that we did last year. And so we redid the bids, and these are the proposals. This is the lowest bidder on the project. And so I will turn it over to Mr. Gerling regarding the conditions of the doors at East York, Indian Rock, and the middle school.
Yes, the doors at East York mainly consist of the interior doors, and I think some of the board members actually saw those a couple years ago. And I really like the way Seth Wentz described the doors at East York, because some of them are actually held together with masking tape. They're that bad. And of course, now we have another year that has passed. So the doors and the hardware, hinges and such, they're all failing. So most of the doors are at the East York building as far as the interior doors. The middle school consists of 10 exterior doors, which were original doors to the building, which are in very poor shape and do add a security risk to that building as well. And we have one door at Indian Rock that's included in this project too, one exterior door at Indian Rock. So that's pretty much it. It's just work that needs to be done.
Okay. Mr. Wentz, would you like to add anything on this project?
I think Barry summed it up pretty good. Yeah, I mean, they're interior doors mostly. This is not frames this time. You know, the interior doors at East Coast Elementary, we're able to keep the existing frames in place, so there shouldn't be any issues with that, as you may have any questions about. The alternates, I don't think we really mentioned the alternates. There is an alternate noted here of $48,000, and that's for East Coast. That is to add several exterior doors at East York Elementary that aren't in the base bid. Those are currently aluminum storefront systems, and they would be replaced with new aluminum storefront systems tying into the security system. Lauer's electrical change order there, or not change order, additional service there of $2,459 is to do the electrical connections to the security to those said doors that are additional exterior doors.
I would also mention, if I haven't done so already, that the majority of this project is for East York doors, with some at one at Indian Rock and 3 at middle school. I'll open it up for discussion at this point regarding the bid awards.
I have a concern. In a little while, we're going to be voting on strategic principles that are going to take us down a planning path for the district. And I'm just a little queasy about spending $500,000 on doors before we know where we're going. Maybe that's just me. And they probably need to be done, but I'd like to know where we're going before we do that. Just a thought.
And John, maybe I can help you with that. Yeah, I certainly understand your concern. The way I kind of look at it, obviously the doors at East York need to be replaced because we have doors that we can't even close. We can't lock and such. So that's a security problem. But no matter, I think what we do is how the district decides to go, whatever we decide to do with our buildings in the future. I would think at this time, we would maintain East York. And if that is the case, whatever we would do to the building, those doors would be necessary. So I don't think we'd be putting any good money towards bad. I would see those classroom doors remaining as well as the frames and such. So I don't know if that helps out, but I totally understand what you're saying, but I'm not sure we can wait. There's a lot of mechanical issues that'll be coming up here within the next year or two that we simply can't wait any longer. We've been putting them off, and the doors are just one of the important things right now, high priority items right now.
Wondering, can you give me how many doors are we talking about for $500,000?
It's all the interior doors that, and I could give you an exact, I don't have it in front of me, but I could give you an exact number, but it's all the interior doors at East York. And it's also a number of exterior doors, which are part of an alternate for East York. And added to that is 10 doors, 10 exterior doors at the middle school. And of course, I said 1 door at Indian Rock. So, but I could get you the exact count. I don't know if you have that, Seth, or not. Just
yeah, I believe it's 87 doors being modified at the East York Elementary School. Not all the doors being modified are going to be completely replaced. Some require hardware changes. Of those, 8 are existing to remain being modified with hardware. 79 are to be replaced. All classroom doors are getting security, and some select exterior doors are also receiving security devices. For the most part, we're able to reuse the existing door frames in place.
Thank you, Seth.
Yeah, it just seems like, I mean, I share John's concern, I guess, that $500,000 for doors. If I'm going to spend $500,000, I want to spend it on something cool, not something boring like doors.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
I have a question, if I may. I'm going on the premise, once the COVID-19 pandemic is behind us, we're going to go back to being concerned about school shootings and that sort of thing. I'm really not trying to be flip about this, but it sounds like the increased security measures are pertaining to that kind of challenge, are they not?
Well, yes, certainly. Right now, in a lot of our buildings, we're keeping the doors open for the added ventilation and such. But once COVID is, if we're through with that, then we'll be back to closing doors and trying to lock doors and add that security. And again, we just have quite a few doors at East York that they will not lock. They won't close and lock because of the hardware. And the doors themselves are out of square and they just won't close.
Thank you.
Okay, if there are no other questions, all of these items will be scheduled for board vote on the 22nd. The last item I have is informational, and it's more of an actual discussion. On January 25th, I presented a preliminary budget for the 22 school year. And we presented that budget with a no tax increase. And there was an increase of expenditures of about 4%, with a deficit projected at $3.4 million. So as we move forward in developing a proposed final, the administration is really looking for some budget parameters on how to, on the board's desire, on what we use for a maximum tax increase, if any, and a maximum use of fund balance. And these will give us our marching orders on as to how we approach the budget moving forward. And so I will open the floor for discussion. I'm looking for two things: maximum tax increase and a maximum use of fund balance.
How about 1.9 and 0?
Zero fund balance?
Yes.
I thought you meant
enough fund balance to do the retirement piece. What's that, $500,000?
With pension, yeah, with pension, we took the approach of having a strategic plan of using $300,000 annually.
So that's okay, but I'd like to see where we are. And Joel, don't shoot me. Let me get this out. We're looking at a substantial increase with charter school costs. We're also looking at a substantial increase in terms of retirement. If we look at those numbers, I would say that a 2% tax increase covers those numbers. So we basically tread water with a 2% tax increase and then figure out where to come up with the rest of the money without spending fund balance. Because fund balance, if I look at the two numbers you showed from this year and next year, fund balance is gone in 2 years. And we can't sustain that. So our drivers are really programs, people, or fund balance. I think there are choices. So I'd ask the board to think about that and tell me if I'm wrong thinking about it that way.
Well, we've talked, I think, several times about what the value of a mill is, or what we have to do to cover a percentage of deficit, or $1 million of deficit. Is it about $400,000, Kathy?
Yeah, give or take. Yeah.
Roughly.
Roughly.
All right, so say we give the number, and you're saying 1.9 probably for the optics as opposed to 2.
Yeah.
And that's under the maximum that we've authorized the district to ask for, which is 3.6.
Correct.
All right, so let's say it's 1.9. That still leaves us in a not very enviable position. And we have mentioned this over and over again, that because the human resource cost in our district is the driver, we're a service business, and we are bound by the terms of many contracts and agreements that really don't give us any chance at all to reduce salaries. We understand that. So in order for us to cut our personnel costs, we have to look to Tim to do something with his strategic principles to help drive down the teacher count. I don't know what the other alternatives are. So that really just reiterates what John said. It's programs and people. That's the elephant in the room. That's what we have to deal with. We just heard from Barry. He talks about $500,000 for doors. Well, yeah, that's a one-time expenditure. But when you take a look at, and we'll see some more detail later with Barton's presentation, when you look at what's on the horizon relative to facilities, those kinds of numbers show up and more year after year after year. So even though they're looked at as one-time expenses, they really look to the district like recurring expenses, which just adds to the pressure to do something about our structural position. We have to maintain the buildings. We may have to reconfigure buildings. Those costs have been anticipated with our borrowings, and we're looking at, say, roughly $10 million of money that's available now. That has to be supported by debt service. That's an ongoing obligation. So I'd say, okay, it puts a knitting needle in my eye to say to the taxpayers, gee, let's see what we can do with a 1.9, especially in this economic environment. And then to give the administration, say that number is a guideline. That's an absolute maximum. And then to talk about fund balance, to do anything structural is irresponsible with fund balance. That's supposed to be used for rainy day, one-time type expenditures. It's not supposed to be used to cure structural problems. So what guidance do we give them? I'm asking. I don't know what the right number is.
Come on, Mike Toman, you look like you're itching to say something. Kathy, hearing nothing, I'd say go with what we said.
Okay. So that concludes my report.
Thank you. Ms. Bowen.
I have no report today.
Okay, thank you. Committee reports. Personnel Committee, Mr. Robinson.
Thank you, Mr. Posnell. You have before you the personnel report, which includes retirement, resignation, termination, leaves, and employment. Would any board member like any of these items considered separately, or are there any questions on any of these items? If not, the chair moves approval of the below mentioned items.
I just have one question under the leaves for
Can we have a
Jennifer.
motion first?
Okay, I'll so move. Ellen.
Second.
Thank you. Now, go ahead.
Okay, go ahead. Under leaves for Jennifer Arcuri, it has her beginning her FMLA, I believe, on January 25th. When is that? For how long is that one? The others you give beginning and ending dates. Anybody know?
Kathy, I can chime in. I mean, she will be out through the remainder of the year.
Oh, she takes till the end of the year. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Other questions or comments? Then this can be a unanimous roll call vote.
This will be considered a unanimous roll call vote unless I hear votes to the contrary. Hearing none, motion passes.
Thank you.
That concludes my report.
Thank you. Mr. Toman.
Good evening. Policy Review Committee. The minutes of our September 16th meeting are linked to the agenda. And we have a myriad of other policies that were discussed at our January 25th committee meeting and recommended out of that committee for first read at the 2 meetings here in February. These were all policies that needed some attention based on recent historical activities for this year, some language changes, things like that, that just bring them more into line with our current situation in the world. So nothing earth-shattering in any of those changes, but if you have a chance to review them, please do so we can vote on them, I believe it, in March. And that's all I have.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Sears, Property and Finance.
Wanted to make sure I'm unmuted. Property and Finance Committee met on February 1st. The minutes of the November 11th meeting are provided. We received presentations on the audit. Again, I'd like to commend Kathy for the fact that we came in clean as a whistle again, which is what we're looking for. And we also had a detailed representation by Barton Associates on the mechanical and electrical systems review that they did. And I think we're going to cover that tonight, aren't we, Kathy?
I do not have the Barton's schedule on here.
Oh, okay, there was a link.
Yes.
Okay, there's a link to that presentation. And that gives us a pretty good idea of things to come. They actually did a 10-year projection and then they threw optionals in. You can probably imagine what we're up against. We're talking about several $1 million in expenditures in the next 5 years that are proposed over the course of this, the total amount of money that's dealt with in that proposal, or that evaluation, I should call it, is on the order of $6 million. And most of that is packed into the first 4 or 5 years of the projection, with about $4.5 million projected for expenditure in fiscal 24. So hold on to your hats, folks. We're getting ready to do some serious upgrades if we want to keep our buildings functional. And I think we all do. We also discussed, Tim had a chance on the agenda to talk about his strategic principles. Those are in tonight's agenda. Our meeting adjourned at 6:49. We will meet again on April the 6th at 5 p.m. On tonight's agenda, we do have the adoption of the strategic principles. And if you'd like, Tim, you can read them, or I will.
Go ahead, Joel.
All right, instructional, these are broken down in 2 areas, instructional and physical plant and fiscal. In the instructional area, we want to create learning spaces that promote collaboration among grade levels and content areas. Number 2, provide more equitable access to educational resources, personnel, and programming. In the physical plant and fiscal area, improve efficiencies and annual ongoing operating costs. Principle number 4, address end-of-life and near end-of-life mechanicals and infrastructure for long-term results. And that's essentially what Barton addressed. Principle number 5, effectively manage future personnel costs by leveraging physical plant improvements that align with instructional goals. Those are the strategic principles. And I believe we had a lively, short discussion about how important it is for our board to give the administration the tools and the guidelines and the constraints that they need to move this district forward. So tonight we're asking for a motion to accept these strategic principles. And I'd like to know if we can have that motion now.
So moved.
Second, please.
Second.
Any discussion?
And I think this can be a unanimous roll call vote. Kathy?
This will be considered a unanimous roll call vote unless I hear votes to the contrary. Hearing none, motion passes.
Okay, and that concludes my report.
Thank you. Mr. Robinson, do you have any legislative updates for us?
Maybe. As you know, the governor presented his budget earlier this week. And we apparently made the news in some manner, shape, or form under his proposal to increase aid to education. Owing to the diversity of views on this board, all I'm going to say this evening is we probably have a dog in this fight. And that's all I'm going to say. Other than in some of the articles that I've read, suburban still seems to be described as a
Healthy district.
Affluent district in keeping with Lower Merion and some other really high-end districts in the state. I'm not sure that the people writing these articles are fully cognizant of the evolution and changes that have taken place within our district. So saying, I would suggest this evening that we may want to consider an approach or a message to our local legislators in the next couple of weeks and have frank and serious discussions with them. And on that note, that concludes my report.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Frarick?
Yes, Lincoln Intermediate Unit. You saw the budget earlier in our meeting and know what's coming there. You also have By Dawn's Early Light, which are the highlights of the LIU board meeting from February 2nd. Always interesting to read what they're doing out there. As far as the Joint Operating Authority, we don't meet until the end of March, at which time we will find out what the budget for per district is for the Joint Operating Authority. Moving on to York Adams Academy, I'm pleased again to say that we have 15 of our 15 seats filled. As with all districts, we've had our share of issues with some closings over there because of COVID cases, but our staff is pushing forward, and on a daily basis, they are in touch with students if they are not in the classroom. So, and I appreciate your consideration of the budget for next year for York Adams Academy. And that concludes my report.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Schrader, York County School of Technology.
The Joint Operating Committee mini board report is provided for our meeting from January 28th. And a couple of things I would like to share from that meeting. One is a York Suburban student was recognized as a student of the month for the month of January. Ella Sprankle is an 11th grader in the engineering program at York Tech, and we extend our congratulations to her. Also, I'd like to let you know that the 21-22 budget received the necessary 10 votes, or 2/3 of the member districts, and therefore was approved. Unless there are questions, that concludes my report.
Thank you. And I'd like to thank everybody that has sat through the evening with us and watched this online. You have a link to the board meeting schedule here. And do we have any more public comments?
There are no additional public comments at this time.
Then I believe, unless somebody has anything else, we can be adjourned. Thank you,
Hey,
everyone.
John,
Yeah.
the date for filing petitions for our school board that was referenced earlier, the first date is February 16th, so next week.
Okay. Thank you. So good night, everyone.